Hello, Ballroom World. This is your boy Kai Ballman, and I'm here with the pioneer icon, Kevin Ultra Omni. I asked Kevin to come here for this short interview to talk about the controversy we have surrounding the phrase pioneer icon. So I first and foremost would like to say thank you, Kevin, for agreeing to do this interview at the last minute.
Of course, anything to help educate the ballroom community.
Absolutely. So I only have a few questions. My first question is, what was the thought process behind creating the term pioneer icon?
The thought process behind creating the term pioneer icon was to give credit to the people who paved the way and went through the struggles that it took to keep the New York City ballroom scene alive and growing. And I wanted that title for them because it's like honoring them, especially in this era of confusion and chaos with status.
Okay, so now I've heard several things because I'm very thirsty for history and knowledge. But if you can just drill down on this, there was some talk about a lot of challenges, struggles, as well as danger that the pioneers had to go through in order to keep this scene going. Can you please expand on that, sir?
Well, let me try to just make it short and simple, but so that we can all understand. We had pioneers who didn't pay their rent for 3 months because they wanted to give a ball. And unfortunately, they didn't work 9 to 5s. So their struggle was to be able to afford to give a ball and at the same time face eviction. And of course, nobody wants to be homeless. But their faith and their belief in the balls was so strong that they were willing to take that risk. Then you have, the femme queens and the drag queens that wanted to come out. Some of them didn't want to wait to get to the balls to, get dressed or whatever, or come in most exotic, extreme costumes that couldn't afford to take taxis or whatever, and they wanted to take the subway. So 5 a.m. going to balls was good for them because they weren't in daylight until after the ball was over, and by that time, they were out of their outlandish outfits. Prior to that, they could have been attacked and targeted, and it was a lot to put in, a lot of effort to, have the balls, go to the balls, and have them keep, everyone's interest. So that's some of the struggles we had.
Okay, and can you please just give us some names of the pioneers who were out during that period?
Okay, I'm going to start from my memory, and we're going to talk about people such as La Duchess Wong, Crystal LaBeija, Pepper LaBeija, Candy LaBeija, Portia LaBeija, Jay Dior, the founder of the House of Dior, who a lot of people forget, but Jay really, really did well with the Dior girls. Sharonda, Campy, Robin Dior, Vance Dior, Bobby Wong, Paris Dupree, Robert Dupree, you had Michael Dupree, you had a lot of people, Linwood Dupree, Tennille Reed Dupree, the Ebonies, you had Larry and Richard, you had R.R. Chanel, you had, myself, you had people such as Michael Princess and Rose Princess and Pee Wee Princess, and you had a lot, there's a lot.
Okay, and of course we all know the first butch queen or male figure, ballroom figure was of course Erskine Christian. Now, can you please elaborate on why there is a distinction between pioneer icon and icon?
Well, my thing with the pioneers is that, we basically were there when the categories, say, for butch queens basically started, because the balls were basically drag balls. They were called the Harlem drag balls. And then you had other balls going on like Phil Black, and I forgot his name, something Marshall, that gave balls. And you had the cotillion balls that the white children went to, like in Flatbush, Brooklyn, where back then it was a little racist thing, but all the mulatto children could attend these balls. And what I mean by mulatto, if you can pass through that neighborhood without being, looking African American, such as Paris Dupree and Dorian Corey, they would go to these cotillion balls in Brooklyn. And but us darker children, no, we couldn't go in there. They had those gangs, the Lords of Flatbush, etc. It's a lot of history. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, sir. I do have another question. Can you please list some of what you would call pioneering events? What was created that was not a part of the ballroom scene until one of the pioneers started it?
Okay, well, you know something? You had drag balls, but you know what? There wasn't the house-structured balls. Let's get into that. There's not enough information or education when it comes to the house-structured ball, which is like the house of this or the house of that. Like, for instance, the first house being the house of LaBeija, and then having the house of Dior, and the house of Wong, and, so forth. So by 1972, with the beginning of the House of LaBeija, started the house-structured balls. Prior to that, I remember in 1975 actually peeking in a drag ball, which was like basically totally for the drags, in 1975 at a club called Constellations on 43rd Street. However, it was all drags, and we only had the one category for the males, which was in 1977 when Erskine started the House of Christian. But Erskine, I believe, also was pulled out at a drag ball, which J. Dior, founder of the House of Dior, beautiful film queens, Miss Sharonda Kim, Campy, and all of them. These were the creators who sold, like people like when Miss Avis came along, and and you had J. Dior, very creative, that could sew. You had Dorian Corey. People were making costumes. They were coming up with all different type of categories, and some of them were like trilogy categories, 3-in-1. When the early 80s, like 1980, 81 started, then you started having more male categories, and that was like the beginning of what I say the pioneering season really started for the guys. Even though we had that one category in 77, Butch Mod, they call it Butch Mod, some call it Butch Mod Face, but it wasn't until 1980, 81 when you started having Butch Queen First Time in Drags, Realness, categories such as Executive, Leather versus Suede.
And who were walking during that time?
Well, you had the greats like William Dupree, rest in peace, Richard Ebony, Larry Ebony, myself, and others, such as Miss Avis and Foxy Pendarvis and Kirk Pendarvis and Dorian Corey and Pepper LaBeija and, Crystal LaBeija, and you had R.R. Chanel and Michael Princess and Rose Princess and Pee Wee Princess. You had, those were the really, like, people, Bobby Wong, Vance Dior, J. Dior, and I mentioned Sharon and them.
So they were the beginning.
They were the beginning.
Okay, now...
Oh, let me not forget our Spanish babes, like Miss Marta, Miss Sugar, Miss Taxi. Those girls all contributed to the beginning of the pioneering scene.
Okay, and so, some people, for some reason, I frankly don't understand it, but we're here to educate. But they feel that if you don't apply the word pioneer to every icon, that you're somehow diminishing their contribution. Is that the case?
No, that's not the case. First of all, we have trailblazers in the community that have created some, like, let me give you an example. Like, let's just say someone like, rest in peace, Mysterious Dior for the Macayella Dep. I mean, that is the greatest contribution, and that's something that we don't segregate on who's who. All I did with the pioneers was just give an honor to an era. just for the struggles and those who paved the way for the overall ballroom scene today. We had no idea it was going to reach outside of the confines of New York City and now global around the world. We just wanted it to work in New York, and we needed each other. We couldn't be selective, you have a choice whether you want to go to a ball in Texas or Atlanta or whatever. We had to be at everybody's ball once those male categories started in order to keep the momentum of the balls and to keep the support going financially for those balls to be held. So there was a lot of sacrifices. Whether you really liked someone or not, it didn't matter. You still went to their balls because it was needed for us to be that way.
Okay, so there you had it. So, everyone who contributed in some type of way, some type of beginning, they are pioneers of a category, but we're talking about the overall ballroom pioneers, the beginning, when it first started, when the scenes first started to open the doors for something like male figures and including more female figure categories. Those are what we consider pioneer, overall ballroom pioneers. But then we also have pioneers of, say, maybe Vogue Femme, or pioneers of maybe, like you said, with Mysterious Dior. Am I correct?
Yes, like Mysterious Dior. And I pioneered many categories, as far as I wanted to see different things. And the categories kept evolving. The balls kept evolving. There's a lot of people that the icons, of today, actually have contributed great feats for the ballroom to expand and continue to grow. All I'm saying is that when I wanted to honor the people who struggled and made those sacrifices and faced death and everything else, being attacked, we want to just say thank you. So that title of pioneer for the white era is basically a thank you and honor. It's not I'm better than you, I know more than you. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that we're saying thank you for doing what you did, because now we have a ballroom global, worldwide phenomenon.
Okay, yeah, and I know when I came out in the late 80s, 89, 90, just dipping my head in, not really walking, but it wasn't dangerous for me to go to a ball. I could go whenever I wanted to. I didn't have to worry about being called this, and the third. So I just want I want to thank you, and I also want you to leave one last word to the community, specifically to anyone who may have felt slighted or misinformed about overall ballroom pioneer, and just some last word, whatever you want to say about this, what we call the ballroom scene.
Okay, what I want to say to everybody is that the pioneer term was only presented for an honor for those who struggled and paved the way for the overall ball scene. Now, if you're a pioneer because you created a category along the way, that's not lessening your importance. We're just saying that we're giving the honor to those that made it easy for you to be here in order to create a category or do what you did in, let's say, the red era, the blue era, or what have you. It's like all of, even when you have our musicians and our entertainment people, that, there were those who created, real pioneers, and then there were those who those pioneers made it easy to be the stars that they were because of the struggles that they did. And it's basically in every historical community, whether it's African American, it's Latin, or what have you, we all have those pioneers that took the risk so that you didn't have to. You just came along and it was already, the foundation was laid. So I'm saying foundation, and pioneers who paved the way. And I just want everybody to know that it's okay to feel good about what you've done and what you've contributed. And nobody's taking that away from you. But can we allow our pioneers who struggled and paved the way to have that honor and that title of being pioneer for creating the scene and keeping the scene going. And all the pioneers that came behind that, we're not talking that you're not important for your categories or what you did, that you feel you're a pioneer for. We're talking about the pioneers that actually faced the dangers and put things in place so that when you came along, it had already been done. You know, and one thing I want to say, and my last words are, you know, like me pioneering, just bringing the balls from downtown to midtown in '83 was just to open up the audience to those people like designers and fashion people to come into the balls, which added more to our community because they weren't going to come to a ball at 5 and 6 in the morning, but you know, on a Saturday night at 10 p.m. and you know, down in midtown, people that were working for Black Hair Is or Barbers on School of Models or what have you, they didn't mind coming.
Okay,
It
well,
was safer.
great. Well, there you have it. So hopefully this will put to rest any confusion. I know it's not going to satisfy everybody because nothing ever does, but I do want to thank you so much for taking out your time because you didn't have to do it. And I love the ballroom scene. I personally want to thank all of the pioneers and all of anyone who contributed to the ballroom scene, including myself, because this is something that we now have, we love, and hopefully it will be here after we're long gone. This is Kai Balmain, and once again, I want to thank the pioneer icon, Kevin Ultra Omni, for this interview. Good night.